Getting our connection. What's up? Hey guys, what's going on? It's Leah from Funk the Influence. I'm so excited to be here today. So excited. We have David George joining us today. David George is a digital influencer. He's a digital and marketing influencer. Sorry about that. And we're really excited to have him today. I know we got a lot of questions. People were DMing us like, oh, I want to know about this. So I am excited. David will join in shortly and we'll get started. Y'all know every time I come on here, I'm drinking something. So today I'm like having ginger beer. So good. So good. Okay. I think we got David.
Hi.
Hi,
This is
David.
actually my first time going live, so I didn't even know that it would look like that, but that's cool. How
Yeah.
are you?
I'm well. I'm glad we're your first time. I'm excited.
Yes.
So welcome to the live world. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Never went live. Watched them, put on a bunch of them, but never gone live. So this is the first for everything. I love it. Oh, I see some people I know already. Mwadi,
Yeah.
Aurelia, hello.
That's amazing. So how are you doing today? How's your Wednesday treating you?
I'm doing well. My Wednesday is actually going really, really well. We had, as you can imagine, due to COVID-19, we've had a lot of clients pivot to digital strategy. So we've had our work on the table, but I feel like I figured out my system that's working really well for me right now. So midweek, usually you're a little frazzled, but I feel good right now. I feel good today. How about you?
Good. I love that. Well, I'm actually excited to meet you. This is our first time we're virtually
Yeah.
meeting. So
Yeah.
yeah, so thank you for doing this, first of all. And I just kind
Cool.
of want to get to know who you are a little bit and obviously what you do.
Yeah.
So kind of tell me where are you from, first of all?
I'm from the East Coast, so born and raised in Boston. But I claim New York because I moved to New York when I was 19 years old. Like one day I just kind of decided that where I was wasn't enough for me. So I packed a suitcase and a pillow and I got on a bus and I moved to New York at 19. And I think that's really where I would say I grew into who I am. So just to give you some more context, at that time, my dream was to be a professional dancer. So that's actually where I started kind of all of this. So new to New York, I was finishing my undergrad at St. John's University where I was studying business management. And I was going to the city and training as a dancer on the side. And I did that for I moved to New York in 2010 or 2011, I want to say. And I did that all the way up until 2015. So a solid 4 or 5 years of pursuing that. And it was great. I got to do a lot of the things that I set out to do as a dancer, to at least to experience. And, I got to a point where I was like, all right, there's more, and my last year or two in New York, I got an amazing door open for me, an opportunity to work with the Gap, doing some digital marketing stuff. And I think that was the point where I really saw where this industry was going. I saw how major brands were using it. I saw how people were leveraging it. And that's really where I would say I fell in love with just that whole process and just the role technology plays in connecting people, brands, building community. People have been able to do some amazing things using this platform. So through that experience, I got to work with a lot of my friends and just really push my own creativity and limits when it came to ideas. And I was like, okay, you know what? I think this is something. So late 2016, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to LA. I think there's a bigger market for this. I didn't really know how big until I got here, but I knew there was a bigger market for it. So I moved to LA. About 3 months in, I ended up becoming an assistant to a really big YouTuber at the time. And that's really where I got a wider scope of what was going on in the digital landscape, that being an influencer wasn't actually an actual job. People are making 6 figures and above doing this as an actual job. But, like anything, once it becomes more competitive, once it becomes more saturated, it's a little harder to break into. So that's where strategy comes in, and that's where my job comes in, right? So I was able to work on that influencers team to really help just kind of mold the team dynamic, the professionalism, but then also help him develop ideas that were authentic to himself, but also worked when it came to partnering with brands, because that was becoming a new thing, right? I think the social space, you know, with Vine, early Instagram, early YouTube was really just about like you getting up there, and it was almost like your own TV show, right? You can create what you want, you can say what you want, but then when brands were realizing the value and just the trust that we as people have in other people, right? That's where influencers come in, and they were starting to put bigger deals on the table. It was like, okay, great. How do I, you know, package who I am, what I offer, what my message is, what do I want to say, while also plugging this brand without making it feel too selly, you know what I mean? So that became something that I was like, all right, I really want to master teaching people how to do that, how to package who they are, not like, you know, because I'm sure you've come across those ads where you're like, that was clearly a paid ad. You were clearly paid to say that. The human element of it gets really, really lost. So I think that a big part of my goal is to work with people to keep that part of themselves when it comes to partnering with brands and not being too intimidated about how to do it. But also, at that time, I'm rewinding a little bit, I noticed a huge underrepresentation of people of color in this particular sector. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to make it my goal to not only work with people to build brands in this space, as well as find brand partners, but I also want to get a seat at the table. I want to be a person that can connect, you know, my community to these types of opportunities. So that's when I saw the role at Allied, where I work now. And what I do now is I manage all digital social strategy and influencer partnerships, mainly for entertainment brands. So we work with major studios, Netflix, Hulu, Paramount, Disney, Apple TV Plus, HBO, list goes on. So what our goal is, I work for the multicultural division. So I create digital strategy that delivers their projects to the African American audience. And within that role, I also am able to bring on different talent and influencers to be a part of those amazing opportunities.
So how does that look? Because thank you for all of that, because you summed up a lot of questions that I know a lot of people have as to what is that. So can you give me an example? You know, you don't have to like name names, but just kind of an example of how you bring those Black influencers to, you know, these bigger brands.
Yeah. So typically what happens is, you know, we have a great leadership team that does some of the groundwork in bringing in new clients. And what we typically do is when a project lands and hits our table, we sit in a room and we kind of brainstorming, just really dive deep into the different layers. So I'll just use the most recent example, which was Little Fires Everywhere that we just did, which is a new series on Hulu out now. Show. Kerry Washington and Reese Witherspoon. Have you watched it?
Yes.
Did you finish?
Love it. Oh, I finished it. Yeah.
Oh,
it was amazing.
It's awesome, right? So that show was really fun because we had a lot to work with, right? Like in that series, we see all these different avenues of motherhood, profiles of motherhood. There's a huge art component to it with Kerry Washington's character, Mia. Like her profession, she's an artist. We see a lot of like different, this series was based in the 90s, but a lot of the issues with classism, prejudice, prejudice, you know what I'm saying, like classism for the most part, racism, it still exists today. So we felt like we had a lot of core themes that we can pull from to create an awesome campaign. So with that one, typically once we do that, we're like, okay, here are the core themes, here's some of the multicultural people that are in the cast that we can leverage. How do we take these themes to create connections with our audience, right? Because I think today it's less about just saying, hey, let's tap this influencer to tell everybody to watch, right? Like sometimes that might be a very minimal approach that we'll take, but I think especially due to the state of the world right now, people want things to watch, but they also want things to do, right? So playing off of that art theme in the show, we're like, okay, essentially who would be interested in something like this, right? If Kerry Washington's character is an artist, then we obviously want to draw in artists to come in and watch this. If this catered to the teen audience, there was just so many different things. So typically what happens is we pull out any and everything that we feel like would be a connection point for someone in our target demographic. And we build basically target lists for influencers based off of that. So who reaches older women in the AA audience, who reaches teens, who reaches artists, shall I say? I was going to say art fans, but who reaches artists, who's someone that really that we've already just kind of seen or may personally know creates amazing content that around drama series that draws people in, you know what I mean? So it varies in a lot of different ways, but for the most part we try to keep it as authentic as possible to the actual project, and we work with people who we feel like connect to those themes.
And your focus, like you said, is typically, is it Black and brown influencers, or is it typically just African American focused?
The agency as a whole, the multicultural division as a whole focuses on AA and Hispanic, but I specifically focus on sourcing African American influencers to be a part of this campaign. So again, once we create those target lists of like who we think, we're considering a lot of things here, right? So we're considering the influencer and how relevant they are to what we're trying to accomplish with the campaign. We consider their reach, right? Because audience is important. And it's not so much always about the size of the audience, but the quality of the audience, right? Because I think something that gets really misunderstood in this landscape is, as long as I have followers, I'll just get all these campaigns, or I'll get all these jobs, or I'll get all these brand deals. And that might be the case in some arenas, but not always, because it's really a matter of, does your audience respond to you? Does your audience actually move when you say move? Are they actually intrigued when you talk about something or ask them to go, just ask them to respond to a call to action in general? Does that make sense? So it's really about the quality of your audience and whether or not they actually engage with you when you do things versus the fact that they're just there, right? Because you can have 10,000 followers who are really responsive, really engaged, really work with you when you're doing something on your platform, right? And that's great. But you can also have 100,000 followers where only like 500 of them actually respond, right? So although you have a large reach, isn't your audience always quality? So I always tell people, like, I know a lot of people get really obsessed with trying to grow their followers versus actually, putting a lot of time, effort, and thought into their messaging and what content they're putting in front of them. That's way more valuable.
Right. No, I love that. Because I believe in the same thing. I believe in organic, growing organically. Even like with our page, we have a lot of interaction, and when we do an event, people come out, and it's like people actually buy tickets to things because it's an organic and a quality audience. So I totally understand that. And I love that. So speaking of, African-American influencers, do you believe, we spoke about this, but I hear a lot of influencers talk about this, and I have another influencer coming on Friday, how hard it is for a Black creator to find that audience, because they're not, they're not just trying to have one audience that looks like them. They're trying to reach all, like everyone else. So can you tell me like how does someone grow that audience? How do they find their audience?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what not to do first, right? I think what not to do is look at what's trending, right? And say, I'm just going to do that, right? I think something that also gets missed is the fact that a lot of these influencers that are huge today and have these really lucrative platforms, 90% of them, in my opinion, weren't trying to do that, right? When YouTube first launched and when Vine first launched, like, these were people that just genuinely found their calling being on camera, found their calling communicating online, probably were just bored teenagers who made videos in their room. They were speaking to something they authentically connected to, wanted to say, which allowed them to be consistent enough to see the results, right? So I think the number one thing I guess I would say is to really make sure that you know why you're creating what you're creating. You know why you're saying what you're saying, right? Because if you're not connected to a bigger picture, right, one, your audience will feel that, but two, if you're just doing, oh, I saw so-and-so make comedy sketches, so that must work. And it may, right, for some people, but it may not. And if you don't truly love communicating in that kind of way or making that type of content, you're not going to do it consistently enough to even see some type of growth. So I think that would be the number one thing, is really focus, really sit down and ask yourself your why, and your why, and what it is that you're trying to say and communicate to an audience, and identify who that audience is. So I think there's no way, in my opinion, to appeal to everyone immediately. You kind of have to have a niche of who you're trying to reach. Focus your content to them specifically. Get that community, get that audience in. Then, okay, I want to focus on getting Hispanic audience members. So then you maybe do some collaborations, right? I think collaborations are huge. And I think we don't do that enough. Collaborate, do stuff like this, right? Just from this live that we're doing alone, now my audience is aware of you, your audience is aware of me. Do you see what I'm saying? So collaborate. But I think immediately we all know, like for me, I really, really, really want to speak to young Black men, right? Like, I relate to our story. I know what it's like. I've been right in the center of New York, Hollywood. So I've experienced a lot of things that I know personally a lot of young Black men are like intimidated by, or they don't want to walk into certain rooms. And I want to speak to that. I want to be the proof that no, we really can do what we want to do. What we put our mind to, shall I say, right? So I try to always make sure that I'm making content, whether it be in the actual video, in a discussion like this, or in my caption, that's who I'm speaking to. But it doesn't mean it doesn't mean I'm excluding anybody else, but that's who I feel like that's what I feel like my purpose is right now, and who my journey is for. That's what I want to kind of really watch and pay attention to it. So what not to do, look at what's trending, just kind of do whatever and throw things online. I think you really got to think about what your content is. Are you adding value? Is your message truly your message, right? Is your story being communicated well? And if you're consistent with that enough, like, your audience will come.
I love that.
Second, one more thing I'll add is understanding that there's different audiences on different platforms. That's a big one too, right? So
exactly. That was definitely another question, because you'll see somebody who has 150,000 followers maybe on Twitter, but maybe and then Instagram they have maybe like 9 million. So, or whatever it may be, maybe those translate to be lower, but it always seems to be different. Why is that? Why do you have an understanding of that? Like,
yeah, that's because everything's not for everybody, right? And to be specific, that means when you think about Instagram, right? Like, this platform was first created for photos, right? It's grown so much since then, but what people want to do here is see visually stunning content, whether it be videos or photos. They're not really here for chat and conversation, right? So some people, they're great at that. They're great at producing really great photos, and they're great at producing really entertaining videos. That's what Instagram is for, right? Then there are people who are great at writing, right? So it's like, maybe photos and videos aren't their thing. They're great at written content, right? LinkedIn articles may be your thing. You see what I'm saying? Twitter, if you have a really witty personality, if you're comedic and you can really get a lot across in 140 characters or less, Twitter's your thing, right? When you think about TikTok's that really micro video content, music based, dance, lip syncing. If you like to perform and showcase yourself in that way, where it's not necessarily like your music or your, you know what I'm saying, then that might be a better avenue for you. So I think that's why you see these differences in people being more successful on one platform versus the other. But it can also be they're more consistent on one versus the other. Their content just gets delivered better on a different medium. I think that's one thing to really pay attention to for yourself as an influencer, is like, no, test yourself on all these different platforms and just kind of see where how things are performing, right? I think a lot of people went over to TikTok recently because they were still getting great organic reach and engagement. LinkedIn, same. It's more of a content platform now, where people think it's mostly like professionals and job searching, but it's grown so much. So that's also getting great organic engagement and reach. So I think the key is just to test yourself on these different platforms and really look at the data. Don't just put things out and be like, oh, it didn't work. Really look at the data. You'll see that the same photo you put on LinkedIn versus on Instagram, for some reason, got like 25% more reach that
Right.
tells you something. People here are responding to you a little bit more, and you got to kind of figure out what it is that they're responding to. Does that answer your question?
No, that answers the question well,
Yeah.
because I mean that's very true. You do have to kind of test it out to see what works.
Yeah.
So what do you think about these emerging platforms lately? So I know, I was just watching a music conference. It was called the NOLA Music Tech Conference. And in that conference, this woman was speaking about the rise of Twitch and how people are now, obviously Twitch was a thing already, but for gamers.
Yeah.
But this is the thing people are switching to. And, they're doing things like how Travis Scott did the whole Fortnite thing. So I feel like all these platforms now, labels are getting hip to, okay, we have to find a way virtually because we can't go outside. There's no concerts. We need to find a way to do this. And I know there's a negative connotation around OnlyFans as well. I don't know if you've kind of checked that out, but I was listening to a podcast earlier, and there was a guy who works at OnlyFans, and he was speaking to all the, the different outlets, how it's not just this platform for over sexuality or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not just that you can do anything, but it's just all about paid subscriptions. You don't have to pay to use it, but you have to pay to view it. So whether you are doing $2 or $12, people are it's a thing. They're doing cooking shows and all this. So what emerging platforms do you see are working, or that you're interested in to do for your clients?
Ooh, okay. Well, first off, I think the trends in consumer behavior had just shifted so much at this time. Like, it's interesting you mentioned gaming, because like amongst millennials, we're seeing a huge shift in, like, well, not a shift, but there's an increase in like streaming, obviously. But Gen Z, which is the generation right below us, there's a huge increase in them in gaming. So I think I'm at a point where I like the idea of using virtual, platforms, Twitch, Instagram, anywhere where you can go live, basically, to create awareness, to broadcast, to share. But I think what I'm finding to be more enjoyable, what's really fun for me right now, is creating ways to allow people to hang out with each other without really hanging out with each other, right? So I think that's why we're seeing. Yeah, I think that's why we're seeing such a strong growth in platforms like Twitch, because, it's been around for a while, but we had other options. We can go out and we can do things. But now when we're stuck at home, we want to watch TV. We want to watch a movie. We want to read a book, but we also want to hang out with our friends. So I think Twitch, platforms like Twitch, and even just Instagram Live, with how they've made some of their changes, it's just in the past week, is doing a great job at allowing people to hang out with each other, or at least feel like they are, you know what I mean? So, I don't know. I think some new things that I love right now, I think Quibi's not really a distribution platform. It's just a new streaming platform, but they did a really great job. I don't know if you guys had a chance to check them out yet, but with creating pretty much mobile first content, right? So it's made for vertical, but also it does this cool thing where if you like turn your phone, you see the other perspective, right? And it doesn't ruin what you're watching. I wish I could explain it better, but go check that out. Yeah, go check out Quibi. It's really cool. So, like, for example, let's say we were in a movie right now. If someone was holding their phone horizontally, right, they would kind of see me from a third-party lens. They would see me talking to you on my computer, on my phone, right? If they turn their phone vertically, they would get my perspective, where they would see what I'm seeing on my screen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's
there's layers to that.
I have to check it out now. Okay, I gotta see.
But I guess to answer your question, I think I'm really most excited to see what TikTok will become. I think people are still kind of figuring out how to build their brands there, how to monetize there. So I'm really interested in seeing what TikTok will become, and I'm also really curious in seeing what IGTV is going to become. I feel like we haven't hit the sweet spot on that yet. So, and then just again, I think everyone's starting to cater to mobile first content. So I really want to play more with that.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. I like it. Because I know I was just thinking of those monetizing sites, which happen to be the OnlyFans and the Twitch. And I'm like, we're going to start seeing more people on those, people you don't expect. So,
Sorry. Let me just layer onto that really quick. So With OnlyFans, I think what we're seeing today, we kind of saw it first with YouTube, except YouTube was free subscriptions, is what's happening now is people understand that, like, hey, I have an audience that loves to consume my content. I add value to them in some cases. Like,
Yep.
this is the same way as me having my own Netflix or my own anything that asks people to subscribe in order to see content that I'm producing on a daily. And I think it really depends, like, how, how big of a fan you are of an influencer, or not a fan, but how heavily you follow an influencer that you like or can learn from, and whether or not, like, you want to continue to see organic content from them, right? Because I think what you eliminate having an OnlyFans probably being your solution to distributing your content to your audience is that you can receive your payment through their subscriptions versus having to do a lot of brand deals or sponsored things in order to deliver to them. You see, so I think there's definitely communities of people out there who they would rather do without all these paid advertisements, and they would completely become a loyal subscriber to an influencer that they love that will produce content without all of that. So I think there's an avenue for everybody. Everybody's still just kind of figuring out where they fit in, but I think the idea of being able to own your own network, essentially, right? That's what YouTube channels are. That's what Instagram channels are. OnlyFans account. Everyone has their own personal network where with the exception of like rules and regulations from, guidelines from like Instagram, Facebook, will take your stuff down if you violate them. But for the most part, everybody has their own platform to package and put out things however they want to do that. And I think that's really cool.
So what content do you believe gets, I would say gets the most views, but I feel like we kind of know what gets the most views when it comes to that. But I guess more so, what are millennials and Gen Zers wanting to see? Like, do you kind of know? Like, I don't know. It's been very, I feel like there's so much out there. That I'm always like, what do people want to see? Obviously variety, but
I think it's not really a question about what they want to see. I think we can study behavior, right? Like, that's one thing we just, like I mentioned, since COVID-19, and we've been on this like whole social distancing thing, right? Again, there's been a huge spike there's been a lot of shifts in just consumer behavior. I think that's kind of the better way to look at it, because you only can identify what people want to see from you, right? We can't say everybody wants to see this. It's really about being able to learn how to distribute and shift content to audiences that are already there by leveraging existing consumer behavior. So I think right now, like I said, with millennials are all about social challenges right now, things that get them up and they can be a part of a community, hashtagging, as well as they want to talk about the movies they're watching, the shows they're watching, the things that they're doing. We're a lot older, and in Gen Z, like I mentioned, there's a huge spike in online gaming. So they want something that feels a little less serious. You know what I mean? They want something that's fun and, again, creates that kind of virtual hangout experience for them and their audience. Older professionals are more focused on like online shopping, right? So again, when you're targeting a campaign, if you know that's who you're trying to reach, that's how you want to position it. Let's see. I think it's less about like what do people want to see. I think it's just more about just keep coming up with exciting and fresh ways to engage people and not selling to them. That's the answer. People don't want to be sold to, right? At least not so blatantly. They want to have an experience with whatever it is that you're putting in front of them, and then being able to make their own decision from there.
I like that. So you work with brands and big companies. So my question to you is, because I know a lot of people have asked that, was one of the DMs, was how do you get a brand to work with you?
Yes, I love this question. Okay, so 4 things. We talked about audience already. That's first and foremost. Like, put all your time and energy into figuring out who your audience is and what you can do to build on that audience. And I think also remembering that, like, I don't personally believe there's any such thing as too small. Like, start small, keep it authentic, keep it reasonable for yourself, right? Like, don't set a crazy goal to be like, I'm gonna produce content every day. Great, if you have time for that, amazing, right? But if you can only do once a week, do once a week and be consistent with that, right? So first and foremost, build your audience and also teach their audience what they can expect from you, right? Are we gonna get content every Friday? Are we gonna, or are we gonna get it just kind of randomly? Then when it's coming all randomly, I'm not really that tuned in, right?
Okay.
I think the second thing is content and strategy, right? So I talked about it a little bit before, but essentially what people are as influencers, are billboards, right? So it's like when a brand is looking at your platform to decide whether or not they want to go into a partnership with you, and they do vet you, right? So as I mentioned, when we do our brainstorms and we come up with who we want to reach out to, perhaps we send those lists over to clients, right? And they then go through and vet. What they're looking at is audience, right? Your engagement rate, right? So something's off if you got 100,000 followers, but you only have 10 comments and 100 likes. Something's off, right? That tells them, how much of your audience are we actually going to get exposed to, right? So they're looking at the audience and the quality of your audience, how much reach overall, but also what your content is, right? Is your content, are we able to easily find an opportunity to place our product, whether you do videos, whether you do photos, do you have some type of content that easily allows us to see how this partnership can happen, right? Do you already have a relevant audience for going back to Little Fires Everywhere that loves art, right? So does it make sense to do some type of art partnership with you and leverage your existing audience? So I think content's really important, thinking about what that is, and then strategy. So again, not just kind of posting at any day, anytime, whatever you want, really having a streamlined focus of like what it is that people are going to get from you. Because I think we discussed this when we first spoke, but I think a big challenge that I see is sometimes I really want a rationale for influencers, or sometimes I really want to pitch them, but when you look at their content, it's not cohesive, right? It's not clear who they market to. It's not clear what we don't really know what we're gonna get. So it almost feels like, do we even have the conversation? So I think content and strategy. 3, relationships, right? So this is the bigger question, relationships, right? I think starting off as an influencer, you got to give to get, right? So there's so many brands out there that are willing to work with you, are willing to help you fill up that resume so that you can at least show that you are brand friendly. Like, go that approach, right? But once you have a solid platform, some solid numbers, and again, it's not about quantity, it's about quality, really good content, you got to package that, right? So I suggest having, some people think websites are old fashioned. I don't want one. They can just go to my Instagram. True, but a website is very organized and allows me to find exactly what I want to find. Whereas if I go to your Instagram account, sometimes I'm scrolling and I'm looking for the relevant video that I can grab to, it's a lot more work. So that might turn people off. But I recommend overall having some type of like media kit, or even like a one sheet that clearly outlines to someone you're trying to work with who you are, what industry you're in. Are you in fashion? Are you in beauty? Are you in TV, film? Are you in comedy? Like, what is the industry that you feel like you're in front of, right? And again, what your influence is, right? You have to actually have influence over people in order to make all of this work together, right? So making sure you have a strong brand package that makes it easy for people to decide, okay, you're the obvious choice. That makes it easy to decide we're going to get what we need if we partner with you, right? So I think that's one way. The second way is not being afraid to reach out to brands yourself and or agencies like Allied, right? So it saves me so much time when someone's like, hey, David, I'm an influencer from Utah. My profile, I have 100,000 followers, and I talk about pets, right? Like pets, I don't know. Sometimes that happens. We're doing a new Scooby-Doo campaign in a little while, and yes, Marty, I'll talk about that in a second. Well, we should get into these questions. I see all these here. And I talk about pets, right? And I get on average, like, give us some data and some actual results that shows us that this will be impactful, or that your profile is actually impactful. So reaching out to agencies and being like, hey, I'm in your area or wherever you are, I would love to partner. Here's my platform. Here's my socials. Like, give us your socials. Here's the context of my content. Here's the value I bring. And here are my rates. You know what I'm saying? Like, do as much work as you can, so we don't have to go find you. Come to us as well. And I think sometimes people are like, oh, do I partner? Yeah, emailing a brand is less likely to get a response than it is like looking up like who are the local agencies in your area that work with the type of brands that you want to work with, and make sure that they have something in front of them to kind of help put you in front of those projects. Those are the top couple things that I would recommend.
I love that. That's great advice. Do you want to answer this question? I pinned it for you right there.
Yeah.
To talk about what would repel a brand from looking at maybe somebody's Instagram, or what would that be?
Yeah. So it's a tricky time that we're in, because I feel like we're in an economy where almost anything goes, but at the same time it doesn't, right? So I think the first thing you want to do is make sure that you know who your target or ideal client is, right? Because there are, to the point of this question, there are things that will cause you to not be considered or to lose a job. So I think it's just always safe, be professional at all times, right? Like, on every platform that you're communicating, anything that goes on the internet lives on the internet, right? So if a brand goes to your profile, wherever it is that you choose to send them to, and they see anything, any type of comments that may be controversial, any type of content that supports something that's controversial, those are the biggest way to turn people off. And then just also, those are the biggest things. So just being really careful what kind of things you put up there, what kind of things you say, what type of things you interact with, right? Because you also can see what people are liking, what they're commenting on. That can come back and bite you. And to give you a small example of this, and it's super petty, but do you know I think it's the poppy flower fields, something here in LA with the orange, you know what I'm talking about? What's it called?
The poppy fields.
The poppy fields. Okay. So we're doing, I won't be too specific, but we're working on a very family campaign for an animated movie. And we submitted some influencers, and literally they crossed off some of them because they said, hey, we went to their account and we saw them, they're laying in the flower fields, right? Now, why is that a problem? Because when you go to these sites, you're supposed to stay on the trail, right? Yeah. And there's lots of eco-friendly people that will be pissed at the brand for partnering with someone who's ruining the economy. You see what I'm saying? So it can be the smallest thing sometimes. So I just think always being cautious of like, understanding like what your dream client or clients, what they believe in, what their social causes are, what their community causes are, and just making sure that you align with that, right? Now, what I'm not saying is be someone else. I'm not saying that, but just be mindful of the fact that when you go into a partnership with a brand, you're a representation of them, right? So they want to make sure that you check all the boxes that won't bring them some bad press down the line, you know?
I like that. So do you inform the influencer of that if they're your client? Obviously, like, if they're your client, do you tell them, hey, you should take that photo down, or like, how do you? I try
to. I do a little bit of both. I'll say, hey, I would recommend taking this down, maybe not posting things like this, because you got to remember, like, this is where brands are coming. Some people, if that's your goal, right? Not everyone is using Instagram as a job or social media as a job.
Exactly.
If your goal is to use it as a job, right, you got to be mindful of those things, and that's just kind of what it is. So I tell people every now and then, hey, I wouldn't post things like that, or I'll be like, you need more content that looks like this, right? I have such and such coming up. I think you'd be a great fit, but right now the content on your profile will not close the deal, right? So maybe start, or if I, every now and then when I'm consuming, I'll see things that I'm like, oh, that's working for them. Hey, do more of that. You see what I'm saying? So it really depends. But what will repel a brand is anything that violates anything that violates any public information they have available of like what they believe in, what they support, what kind of brand they're trying to be. And if you don't fall in line with that, it won't be a good fit.
I love that. Because that's good information. A lot of people don't know. I mean, who would know to sit in a poppy field? But I love that. So we spoke about, how to approach a brand, which, I know a lot of people kind of had questions on that. I know there's some musicians, some managers, producers, different people in here. So, just as far as the relationships, I know that's a big thing. It works heavy in every industry. How important have your relationships been to you throughout your career?
Oh, they're number one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like your relationships are probably what's going to open 99% of the doors you're going to walk through, right? Because a lot of it's based on trust, right? A lot of it's based on trust. A lot of it's based on timing. Like, do I spend a lot of time looking for new faces? Yes, because I'm intentional on wanting to bring in new faces. But if I have a project that needs to get turned around, it's Monday, and we need to have this locked in by Friday. Best believe the first thing I'm going to is my immediate network of people that are in sight, right? So out of sight, out of mind. So I think the biggest thing to kind of focus on if you're trying to do anything in entertainment is relationships, right? Because
Right.
we're not necessarily like, I'm not doing casting calls on my Instagram or anywhere where you can just kind of find the information, right? You got to be in the know to be in the know, is my opinion, especially like in big
Right.
cities like LA, New York. But I think most of it is just based off of trust, right? Like at the end of the day, it's like, yes, we want to work with, new people and new faces, but we also have our credibility on the line. We also have a client that we want to do a great job for and impress. So we'll also bring on people who we think are going to do the most impactful job, right? Now, I think this is a good time to kind of point out some of the additional mistakes that I see, right? Where sometimes we'll reach out to influencers and it'll be someone new, right? And I'm like, hey, we had this awesome campaign. I checked out your content. I think you'd be the great fit for it. Maybe I'll mention the budget in there if I know it. Maybe I won't. Maybe I want to get them on a call. But sometimes influencers go straight for the money, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. I want 15 grand, but you didn't tell me, you didn't share with me that you were excited about being a part of this project. Are you a fan of this project or this brand? What your approach would be? What would you offer the campaign? Like, what's guaranteeing me that we're going to see a return on what you're asking for, right? So I think it's kind of like reshaping your mindset around like you think, oh, I'm just doing business, but you didn't sell it first. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I think relationships are key. Like sometimes it can take one email that I'll get that I'm like, I'd never reach out to that person again. You know what I mean? So I think just remembering that, like, or even when you get a campaign, not being too nickel and dimey. I'm not saying don't do what you're worth or ask for what you're worth, but sometimes, right, especially if it's a new relationship, sometimes you want to give a little bit more, right? That's going to make me want to look out for you down the line, right? So again, I'm not recommending anybody sell themselves short or, not really ask for what they want to ask or do what they want to do. But I think it's super important to make sure that you have relationships in the areas that you want to be a part of, or in the industry you want to be a part of, because that way you can save yourself some time also with having to always go looking for opportunities, and some can come to you, right? That's going to be the main benefit of relationships.
Okay. So how have you started, your David George, your own company, which I think is amazing. What made you kind of do your own thing as well? Because, you're still working with Allied Global Marketing, but what made you say, I'm going to trust in myself to do this?
Yeah, well, I think with any job, like everybody has passion projects, right? You have those things that you want to do or people you want to invest in that's completely separate from anything your job would ever ask you to do. So that's really where it comes from, right? So I developed David George to be my umbrella of, my umbrella to be able to house all the passion projects, all the things that I want to do that maybe my job at the time would never ask me to do. And I still want to be able to kind of do those things and have them live somewhere. So for me, the David George brand is just kind of really invested in making sure that, not making sure, but just really invested in people, right? I really love to work with people and help them grow into their fullest potential. I really love helping people understand this ever-changing economy, right? I'm always reading, always educating myself on just kind of what's going on in this landscape. So I think that's the biggest thing, though. Overall, it's just David George and Co. I work with influencers, I work with entrepreneurs, I work with talent, mostly in the personal branding space, mostly in professional development space. So that's why that exists. It's just because it's like, my job would never necessarily ask me to do that, and I still want to be able to do those things and have it live somewhere. So that for the most part.
Well, yeah, you want to show up your work. And so speaking of that, like you said, there is so much out there, so much work out there. This question here, it looks like from Train with Romel.
Yes.
How do you succeed in a saturated market? Like in what you do? Listen, you can answer this for both of us. How do we succeed in this saturated market?
Right, this is a quote my sister always uses. Like, if you think there's a such thing as saturation, look at the bread aisle, right? Like, there's a lot of different breads. It's just really about profession. I mean, sorry, it's about niche. I think I'm gonna go back to niche. I'm gonna go back to audience. It's about really trying to focus. To at least to start, like you can't appeal to everyone. I think that's the number one mistake I made. People make, like you want to appeal to everybody, right? But I think the biggest thing to do is, well, two things, right? One, really focus on niche. Like, I want to reach this consumer, right? And cater all your efforts, your content, your intention on reaching that consumer, right? Because chances are that consumer knows other people who also need what you have to offer, right? But I think the second thing is being ahead of saturation, right? A lot of people wait until something is hot before they decide to jump into it, right? That's what happened with Instagram. That's what happened with YouTube. That, right? When you think of like creators that go as far back as like Lily Singh, when she got on YouTube, right? Like, again, she was just a teenager in her room creating videos because that's what she loved to do. She loved the community that she was building. She wasn't thinking about trying to monetize the next day, right? Eventually, over time, that grew into what Lily Singh's brand is today. So I think she was a part of YouTube when she saw the potential for it. She saw what it could be. She believed in the vision of YouTube, which allowed her to kind of stay in that market, stay on that platform, and grow in that market before it got what you want to call saturated. Now, what I was trying to say before is, at the same time, I also don't believe in saturation, right? Because if you're good, if you're offering value, if you're consistent, eventually your audience will find you. I think it becomes a saturation problem when you just don't give yourself enough time to break through. That's my honest opinion.
No, I like that. I like that because I believe the same thing. There's so many of everything. You know what I mean? But people aren't stopping to make it. So.
Right. But if you want a tangible tip, Romel, what I would say is what I call, I didn't make this up, but it's called the remix strategy, right? So essentially what you can do to try to at least isolate yourself from what you feel like may be oversaturated is you got to figure out, okay, maybe the fitness industry is really saturated right now, but what can I add to it, right? That's a little different, that creates a new sector of it, right? So I have a friend of mine, I don't know if he's still on, he was on in the beginning. His name is Justin, right? And he's really, really paying attention to how wearables are growing in the fitness space, right? Like actually being able to wear clothes, wear sensors that give you way more accurate data of how your body is actually changing and responding to the physical activity that you're doing, right? So maybe you're the one person that decides to really take the leap and build a class that focuses on having people, allowing people to have access to wearables to have more accurate training, and maybe we see something different happen because you decided to really build your brand, right? So you're still in the fitness industry, which is saturated, but now you created a little bit more of a niche space that can be highly attractive to someone who feels like, you know what, I'm tired of just going to the gym and being told to do squats and push-ups. I really want a different experience. And I think with wearables, because we were talking about it for a couple months with wearables, I think we're really going to see a huge change in how people are able to track what's really going on inside of their bodies. You know what I mean? That's going to be interesting. So I think remix strategy, right? Take a look at what's working and think about how to add your spin to it that makes it different.
I know you spoke on this earlier. You were talking about, being consistent in your posting and all of that. Because we all try to figure out what is the time, how often should people be posting on a weekly basis? Like, I guess how, like, I don't know if there's like best times. Like I always hear there's the best times and, 4 days a week. Like, what do you think that is?
So quick disclaimer, I'm not a social media growth expert, just quick disclaimer. But what I will say is I don't believe there's a way to beat the algorithm, right? I think if anything, the algorithms on these platforms work in your favor, right? They show your content to the people that engage with you the most, right? Also, Instagram has also done us all a favor, and they give us that back end data that shows us, right, based off of this type of content that you put out this week over the last 7 days, this piece and this piece got the most engagement or the most impressions or the most reach, right? That immediately tells you to do more of that, right? It also will tell you, um, you know, how many of your followers are male versus female, right? So if you know you have a larger female fan base, you got to really think about what is it that connects with the female consumer, right? It also will tell you in the back end the activity of your followers, right? They're usually more active at 3 p.m. You see that peak. That's the highest bar on the graph, right? On Wednesdays, it's 3 p.m. On Fridays, it's 6 p.m. So I think it's really about looking at the data that Instagram's actually giving you, right? And just keep trial and error and just keep retesting your strategy against what the data is showing. You see what I'm saying? I think that's the biggest thing. I don't necessarily know if because the day that's best for me to post is not going to be the day that's best for you to post. You know what I'm saying? So use your back end data to really guide the way that you're thinking about that. But as far as like posting frequency, honestly, in order to be at the top of the algorithm, right, you got to post every day. You got to post every day if you have that kind of time, and up to 3 times a day, right? But I think Gary Vee all the way, I believe in his method of really spreading out your distribution. So again, you don't want to leave people out. So maybe there's ways, I mean, not maybe, there are ways to repurpose content you're putting on Instagram. Let's say it's a video, right? Just to give a bigger example. Let's go all the way to the top. Let's say I recorded this entire conversation we're having right now, right? And this is my pillar content, right? So this long form 1 hour video is my pillar content that, because it's vertical, it live on IGTV, right? So it's on IGTV so people can come and view the whole thing, right? But maybe there are smaller sections or tips or questions that I've answered that I can pull out, right, and share as micro content across Instagram, across Facebook, across LinkedIn if it's relevant for that audience, right? So now I'm getting more use out of this one video. Then to top it off, I can rip this whole audio and put it on my podcast, right? So I think spreading out more, creating more width with your content is definitely key. But yeah, Instagram's gonna favor you if you are more active. So the more active you are, the more your stuff's gonna show up. So the answer, post every day if you can do that. But if not, like create structure for yourself. I post Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever the case may be, and then you just kind of fill in the blanks as you see fit, more lifestyle, candid stuff. But if you're someone who's seriously trying to be a content creator, like I knew 2 girls who they were on TikTok when it was Musically. That's when they first grew on Musically, but TikTok now. And they were like, when we first started, we were posting every day, 3 times a day. You know what I'm saying? The platform's going to cater to people who are the most active. So I just think create for yourself whatever's going to allow you to be the most active. You know what I'm saying?
Love it. So you've given us so many gems. We definitely covered content strategy. We covered relationships. We covered audience. I mean, you hit everything, and I appreciate it. Is there anything that you want to share with the audience that maybe you're working on, or just some advice that you want to give?
Yeah, I think advice-wise, like if being an influencer, joining this economy is something that you really want to do, like you really want this to be your job and you want to get paid to do it, like take it seriously, do research, and look at the content that's already available, right? So like things like what audience is on TikTok versus LinkedIn versus Facebook, that's available in an article somewhere, right? So do the research you can do on your own just to kind of see what's already been said about trends in those spaces. Now, obviously, we're in a place where everything's kind of shifted because of like social distancing and all that. But just really do your research on what's going on these different platforms and what type of content is most consumed and cater your strategy to that. I think just some big things if you're looking to like, you know, work with brands right now. Big things are conversations, virtual activities, people who are doing like dance classes, exercise classes, like those are big trends right now. So like if you're an influencer that's doing that and you have a loyal audience that's tuning in and you're getting engagement, like send me an email. Actually, can I write it here?
Yeah, go ahead. You can type it, and then I'll pin it. It's gonna cut us off in probably 5 minutes.
Okay.
But it's okay.
So
yeah.
if you have any books you would recommend, yes. But you know what? TJ, I'll email you about that. So if you have questions strictly related to like digital marketing, influencer, if you even want maybe like an audit or an evaluation of kind of where you're at, email that. If you have more personal brand, you know what? Let's just do one email. That's the email to email me. And that way I can even talk to you maybe one-on-one about opportunities that we currently have. So that would be people who are currently influencers now. If you are someone who's like thinking about going into the space, maybe want to learn more about like finding your personal brand, just shoot me a DM. That'll be the easiest thing to do, and then we'll kind of take it from there. Yes, things we're working on right now is I don't know if I can share actually, so I won't do that, but reach out to me and I'll let you know. But I think right now what we're paying most attention to is just how consumer behavior is shifting right now. And you know, a lot of what's fueling the strategies that I'm coming up with are, again, like what's going to help our clients create awareness, but what's also going to be sensitive to the time, and again, not advertly too selly for people. We just want to create community. We want to create conversation. We want to create activities. We want people to feel like we want people just to feel together, right? Cliche, but we want people to feel together during this time. So if you're someone who has a platform that's inspiring people to do that, please reach out.
Yes, I love it. Thank you so much, David.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you for joining Connection Sessions and Funk the Influence today. I definitely want to chat with you offline about some things that I feel like we can get into. But I appreciate you. I don't know if anyone has any questions. I know we were kind of answering as we go. I kind of like that, like answering as we went.
I'm going to just see before they cut us off if there's anything in here that we might have missed. Twitch audience is a community versus just watching. Yes, community is huge right now. Because again, with Twitch, it's like you don't necessarily have to be the one playing to be able to tune in and participate and kind of see your friends do what they're doing.
Thank you.
I just think use this time. I guess the last thing I'll say before they cut us off is just use this time to like be creative. Like no idea is bad, right? Like use this time to really be intentional with how you want to create what you want to say, and you just got to make stuff, right? You can't be scared. You can't be too afraid to start. You can't be too afraid to put yourself out there. I think again, and just learning to be the first person to do it. Be the first person to jump. Be the first person to take the leap. Like don't wait until, well, let me just kind of wait and see how other people use this platform before I join it. Like be the one. Like be the solution. Be the solution.
Do it.
You know what I mean? So that's what I would say.
Thank you.
If we missed anything, if you have any questions, just shoot me a DM or shoot something to that email. But overall, I think the biggest thing brands can do, especially if you're a small business, is really tap into influencers right now. People trust the opinions of people more than anything. And you know, I wish I could, you know, like if you want to consult, if you're a small business owner, or if you want to consult, or maybe talking more about how you could develop strategy for your business, I'm open to that as well. So that's the email, everybody.
Yay. Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. We will be back on Friday with our influencer, Daphne Renee. And we just thank you so much, David. This was awesome. Yeah. Very informative. Awesome. I think we all agree that this was very informative. I already got text messages from my friends like, yo, like, I love this. This is great. Great session.
I appreciate it. Yes. Thank you for having me. And let's definitely do it again soon. I'll probably have some updates down the line. So thank you so much.
We got to get out of this quarantine now. Yes. But yes, thank you guys. Take care.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.